Hi guys and welcome back. So I've actually decided to record this video on one of the hottest days of the year, so please ignore how I look at this very precise moment. I have taken 5 minutes away from being a mum and I've decided to record this video, and it has been a absolutely sweltering day, as I think it has been for most of the UK. It has been crazy here in Norfolk, and yeah, so I decided to record this video now because I've got time to, and obviously with everything going on I've got to try and fit in things as and when I can. So if you don't already know, I'm recording on a new camera, which is why things might look a little bit different, but I decided to finally invest in a new camera. But today I want to talk about mental health, because it is Mental Health Awareness Week. So it is a subject that obviously I will put a trigger warning at the beginning of this video just in case, but the title will give away what we'll be talking about. So if you aren't very comfortable with things like this, then please don't watch. Please don't upset yourself for the sake of just watching this video. But I wanted to talk about my mental health story, to get it out there. I haven't done a video like this before. I have actually written a blog post which is now live, so I will link that above or in the description box if you would rather read about it than listen. So let's get into my mental health story. So basically, I had Elsa in 2015. My pregnancy was fine. I was induced with reduced movements and the birth was absolutely fine, and I felt okay after I'd given birth to her. So when I then got pregnant with Cleo about 18 months to 2 years later, I kind of expected the same thing to then happen. I didn't expect things to go wrong. I thought everything was going to be plain sailing and be fine. But with Cleo I developed I found out I had a hip problem during my pregnancy, and I had a very, very bad back. I actually ended up on crutches from about 26 weeks pregnant up until when she was born at 39 weeks. Because of that, they actually decided to induce me. Now, when in the UK to be induced, they ring you in the morning and they say, yeah, we have space for you, or no, we don't. I had one date to be induced and they couldn't fit me in. I had another one, couldn't fit me in. Had another one, they could fit me in, but later in the day. So I ended up going up the hospital to be induced with Cleo. Now, Johnny could stay with me, it was all fine. I went in and I was induced exactly the same way as I was with Elsa. Now, with Elsa, my birth from start to finish was about 4.5 hours. I started to be induced with Cleo at 5. Now, I expected things to start happening quite quickly, and you know, should be born relatively quick. Well, basically things did not happen that way, and after a couple of hours I started to be in a lot of pain. Like, it was worse than my labour even was with Elsa. So I kind of knew that something just wasn't right, and the pain was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, but very, very quickly. And in the end it got to the point where my contractions, I wasn't having a rest in between my contractions. They were literally one all the time, and they tried to stop my contractions, and I ended up basically being laid on this bed with needles after they were putting drips in, and it was very dramatic, to put it that way. And I ended up going down for a category 1 crash section. If you don't know what one of them is, basically they knocked me out with anaesthetic and I had Cleo. Emergency C-section, and we were not expecting it. They didn't tell Johnny anything, they whisked me away, they took me, she was born, they handed her over to him and didn't tell him anything about me, basically. I then woke up in recovery holding Cleo and didn't have a clue what had happened, basically. I felt like I'd been hit by a train. It's the only way that I can describe it. Obviously I'd never had a section before. This was my first one, and I didn't really know what to expect anyway, and obviously Elsa was at home. She was only 2 at the time. So when I finally got home after a couple of days, I just didn't feel right. Didn't feel like myself. Something was off, and I basically put it down to the fact that I just had a baby, I just had an emergency C-section, and I had a toddler at home. Now, they say about baby blues and all that kind of thing, and I hadn't experienced that of Elsa, so I literally had no idea what to look out for. So in the end, I was just carrying on, and I was seeing my midwife and everything like that. And we had to go up to the hospital for Cleo to have a heel prick, which is basically where they prick the heel of the baby and then they do tests. And I could barely walk into the hospital. I could barely walk past delivery suite. I ended up having a panic attack. And the midwife basically told me, you need to have an emergency appointment with your GP because something isn't right. Please ignore the motorbike that has just gone past. Yeah, so you need to go and have an emergency appointment with the GP. You need to go and speak to her. Something's not right. So I ended up going to see my GP, and that is when she put me on my antidepressants. Now, I knew that something wasn't right. I think everyone knew something wasn't right, but the first thing I put it down to was tiredness, it was shock, it was everything all at once, and then I kind of put it down to baby blues, but it was definitely more than that. Everyone knew it was more than that. So I then was diagnosed with postnatal depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, if you don't know what PTSD is, it is basically more commonly known as a condition that soldiers get when they come back from war, and it is a lot of flashbacks, it's a lot of anxiety, depression, like a lot of emotions. You can be triggered by little things, and yeah, there's a lot into it. I'll leave links down below to all of these things so you can read more about them if you want to. And I ended up for a little while after Cleo was born kind of waking up in the middle of the night, hot sweats, just feeling awful is the only way that I can describe it. And I just kept having flashbacks on what was happening, and it was not a nice experience, let me tell you that. And obviously I had this newborn baby, and I just couldn't believe that it was happening. I couldn't believe that I'd ended up having an emergency C-section and all of that happened. And I would never want to badmouth the hospital or the NHS. They've always been there for us, and I would never ever want to do it. But we found out afterwards that I had an allergic reaction to the pessary they used to induce me, which obviously they had no idea about. Also found out that I'd hemorrhaged, I'd lost quite a lot of blood, and a couple of weeks after we actually found out that Cleo had to be resuscitated. Just after she was born, they brought her back, and her obs and everything were fine. They just didn't think they needed to tell us, and obviously we weren't very happy about that. So I basically went through quite a rough time of that, and then I found out I was pregnant with Brody, and obviously I then worried about everything to do with giving birth again because of what happened with Cleo. And they said to me, you can have the option of a natural birth, but we cannot induce you, or you can have an elective section. Now obviously they gave me this option, and we were talking about it, and then I ended up getting hyperemesis. Now if you don't know what that is what they also call extreme morning sickness, but it is most commonly known because Kate Middleton had it with all of her children, and it is to the point where you literally cannot live a normal life because you are being so violently sick when you're pregnant. And I ended up developing it with Brody quite early on. I think I had my first hospital admission when I was 14 weeks, and I had it all the way through my pregnancy. I lost 3 stone, and obviously I was going through kind of the mental health aspect of being pregnant after having an emergency section, as well as having hyperemesis. I also developed sepsis while I was pregnant with Brody, and I ended up seeing a therapist, a clinical psychologist, while being pregnant with Brody to kind of help get over my fear of being in the hospital. And even at that point I could barely look at delivery suite, and I knew that I basically had a countdown going on in my head of how long it would be until I had to step foot in there. So in the end, I ended up going for an elective section. Now, anyone that's had a C-section will know that's not a decision that you take lightly, and people say you forget the pain of it, and I will never forget the pain of having a section, and I'll never forget the moment I decided that I was going to have one again, because I didn't want to have a natural birth and everything go wrong, but they wanted to induce me because my body wasn't coping, but then they couldn't induce me, so kind of my section was the only option that I had, and I had to go through the thought of having to step foot in the operating theatre, the exact same one that I was knocked out in. Obviously I'd never seen this operating theatre before. By the time I even got to the operating theatre, I remember probably 1 second of being in there when I was having Cleo, and that was basically them putting stockings on me and injecting me with all this stuff, and then I was knocked out. So all I can remember from that room is bright lights above my head. And obviously I have this like negative outlook on the operating theatre and that part of the hospital because of what happened. So they gave me the option to go into the operating theatre and what they called desensitising myself to it. And I ended up seeing my mental health midwife, because they have one at my local hospital, and she said, right, you'll see a consultant and we'll speak to him and maybe he'll take you in there. So I ended up seeing my consultant about a week later, and right there and there he went, right, let's go to the operating theatre, no one's in there. It's like they do C-sections every other day, and we were on like the middle day, so there was no C-sections going on. And so he took me in there, and obviously he was the one that was going to be performing the C-section, and also the people that were going to be helping during my C-section were actually in the operating theatre prepping, ready in case there was an emergency. So I met them as well. And Johnny hadn't come with me, I was on my own, and I had to walk in there, and I had no idea how I was going to be or anything. I thought I was just going to freak out, and actually it went quite well. I felt a bit sick and a bit clammy, things like that, but I was fine. I thought I was going to just have a breakdown and wouldn't be able to cope, but no, I was okay. And so like a couple of weeks went by, they booked my section date, and I was very nervous on my section date. I didn't, obviously the last time I had a section I was knocked out, and this time I was going to be awake. So, and I was worried about things happening, and yeah, I just had so much anxiety and everything to do with it. But Brody had other ideas, and about a week before my section date, my waters broke. And because of how fast my labour was with Elsa, they were like, right, come in, we'll do the section and you'll be away, it's fine. Went in and they were like, right, we need to do the section today. So I was like, right, I don't want this to be another emergency section. I wanted it to be calm, I wanted it to be on my terms, I wanted it to be I just wanted a birth that was on my terms. I wanted to have a section that I had planned that was all fine, and I'm not going to get it. And it was a lot calmer. Obviously I hadn't like geared myself up to have it. I basically was just, I woke up one morning, they were like, right, you're having your section today, and that was it. And I actually coped better than I thought I would. My mum came in with me, and I thought I was going to be an absolute wreck during my section, but I wasn't. I was absolutely fine. I did hemorrhage, I lost quite a lot of blood, but I actually felt okay. I didn't know how I was going to feel during my section, because obviously I was awake, I had an epidural. I didn't know how I was going to feel like before, during or even after it. But I had a lovely midwife called Lauren who helped me so much. She was lovely. And yeah, everything went absolutely fine. Brody was born, he was a lot smaller than we thought he was going to be. He was born at 38 weeks. We think it was down to the hyperemesis, but we'll never know. And I basically was in hospital for a day, like one night, and then went home late the next day. And I will link the blog post down below, but I actually ended up taking placenta capsules from Cherished Placentas, and I actually wrote a blog post all about it because they are meant to like reduce your chance of getting like postnatal depression. And before I left the hospital, my midwife said to me, you are at a very, very, very high risk of getting it again. And I kind of already knew that. And I was very worried about it. I didn't want to like feel like that again. So I ended up taking my placenta capsules, and I know everyone has like their own like thought on placenta encapsulation and all that kind of thing, but for me, I honestly thought they worked. I know people think they don't, and there's a lot of websites and things like that that say there's like nothing like proven to help you and that they can be dangerous and stuff, but I think it's each their own, and if you feel like they help you, then that's fine, then take them. And I know a few people that went on to have their placenta encapsulated from hearing my experience of it, and they also said that it really helped them. So I will link that blog post either above or below, so you can give that a read as well. And I ended up having that done, and I took them for about 2 months, and I feel like they helped for the time that I took them, because they like balance your hormones out. I feel like they did help, but I haven't spoken about any of this other stuff yet, and I'm not sure if I will, but a lot of stuff was happening at home, and it isn't something that I have spoken about yet, and that itself comes with a lot of trigger warnings and stuff like that, so I don't really want to like go into detail in that in this video. But a lot of that was happening at home, and I think a combination of everything kind of catching up with me with having Brody, and then the stuff that was also happening, like family stuff that was happening, it got to the point where I was struggling again, and I ended up going back on my tablets. So I'm now currently on sertraline, which I've always been on, and yeah, I'm still on them now, and I'm happy to talk about being on them. It doesn't really bother me. I'm quite an open book when it comes to mental health. I'll happily talk about it. I'll happily listen to anyone else that's got anything to say about it. I'm not, you know, people say it's a taboo subject, but I'm very, very happy to talk about it. And I feel like other people need to be like that as well, which I guess is why I'm making this video in the first place. But I just wanted to make this video to tell people that they can speak up about it. It's absolutely fine, and especially with postnatal depression, because I know a lot of people try and like hide it. They don't talk about it. They're ashamed of it. I think there's it's a bit of a scary situation when you're a new mum and you've got a new baby, and you need to tell someone that you're not coping, you're struggling, and you need help, because you automatically assume that means you're a bad mum, and it doesn't. It really doesn't. So I will leave links to Mind and any other charities that I can find. I will leave links to the NHS websites in case anyone wants to check anything out. I'll leave links to blog posts, literally anything I can find I will leave links to if I think that it's going to be helpful. But I hope you have enjoyed this video, and remember that if you do have any mental health issues and you need to speak out about them, then do, because speaking out about them helps like no end. It takes a weight off your shoulders and you feel so much better. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give this video a like and subscribe, and if you want to comment any experiences that you have had, but I will leave all links in the description box down below.